Okay. Hi, friends. Welcome to the Liz Teach podcast. I'm so glad that you're joining me today. We're continuing the series from Strong Girl, I See You. And today I'm so excited and so happy to have my friend with me, Luci. Some of you will recognize her from her Facebook and Instagram. Luci Speaks. She's a Christian therapist, but I get to call her my friend. And so she's going to help us today with a few of the things that we are burdened with as strong girls, right? Or things that we shouldn't be burdened with. And so let's just have a conversation with her. So welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for finally inviting me to your podcast. I'm excited.
I'm so glad you're here. I
Yeah, I'm
really
excited.
am. Because we have so many conversations and we talk about so many things. And I just want to get your take on it because I wholeheartedly believe, yes, we need the Lord. For sure. That's the priority. But we have people like you that can help us put language to things that we're feeling that we don't understand, help us cope with things better, give us skills. And so tell us a little bit about yourself, though, and how long you've been in therapy. Not your personal therapy, giving others
I haven't been
therapy.
in therapy yet. My name is Luci Serrano, as you know, and I am a mental health therapist, specializing in trauma, and I also specialize in families in crisis. And this January will make 30 years that I'm in this field. I know, it's so crazy when I think about
That's
it.
wild.
It is. And, I started my career working with juveniles in crisis and immediately learned that in order to truly impact them, I had to work with the whole family system and truly got an understanding of what that meant, the system. And I think that's something that's lacking in the church community, understanding that there's a system, that we are more than just spiritual beings,
Yeah.
And so from there grew a deep passion to work with families in crisis and saw that most families were just suffering from unhealed traumas, and passing that on to their children and not knowing how to cope when their children were acting it out, and so I love to work with families. And so if families mean any part, I work with the fathers, I work with the mothers, I work with the children, and realizing that each person in the family holds such an intricate part, especially women,
Yes.
because although God designed men to be the leaders and to be the head of the homes, women are the hearts of the home. And if women carry so much pain and trauma, that heart cannot function the way it's supposed to lead and love the people in their home, even if they're trying their best,
Yeah. When I was getting ready for this, I thought of a verse of a 3rd John 1 and 2. He was writing to his friend. It says, I'm writing to Gaius, my dear friend, whom I love in truth. Dear friend, I hope all is well with you, that you are as healthy in body as you are strong in spirit, right? And so it made me think how we're always focusing on the spirit, the spirit, the spirit, but our mental health is part of our body, right? And so much flows from there, right, Luci? If our head is not right, it affects so much. It can even make us sick.
It will.
Yes.
And the key is that I know, as you, I grew up in church. I grew up in a dysfunctional church. And I knew as early as the age of 10 that what I was seeing in the church was not right. I knew it. I remember seeing some of my friends, young girls, coming to church with bruises on their face that their mothers had done. I remember a little girl in church with iron marks because her mother used to burn her with the iron, and yet the mother was up in the pulpit worshiping, And I remember looking at this as young as 10 years old saying, something's missing here. Like there's a missing, like, how is it that we're singing God, we're talking about our God of love, but I didn't see it in the families. I didn't. And I remember probably about, I was like 16, and I was a hot mess myself at 16, full of anger from my own family dysfunctions and things I had survived. And I remember one time going to a service, a youth service, and they were talking, a regular topic that I feel like most churches do. And I was like, God, why don't you talk about what I'm going through? I remember having this conversation in the church. I said, God, I never hear anyone preach about what I'm going through. Oh, I could think about it. I get emotional. And I remember one time saying that to God, and God said, because I'm preparing you to. And I thought I was hearing things. I did. I was like, me, I'm a hot mess.
That
I'm
part.
a hot mess, you know? And so it's amazing because now I see preachers on YouTube preaching topics that God gave me when I was a teenager, you know? And I was like, God, it took this long, you know? And I remember the first time God showed me in a dream when I started therapy at 20 years old to heal. I remember God showed me in a dream that I was going to be on a pulpit, on a platform preaching. And I was like, I woke up, I was like, that is not me.
Get behind me, Satan.
Exactly. I was like, what is that? And the pulpit that he actually showed me was in a church in Brooklyn, which was known as one of the biggest churches in Brooklyn. And I definitely said, no, that's crazy.
Right.
And fast forward, probably about 5 years later, I was on that pulpit, you know? And I remember talking about these topics, about healthy families and the things we allow and this and that. And I remember doors closing on me. Like I remember the church was not ready. Was not ready to hear it.
So sad.
It is. This is how long it's taken, you know?
Yes.
And in my practice, I work for myself and I see a lot of Christians with church hurt and don't want to go to church because of that. The things that they tolerate, the things that were not spoken about, the things that they focus on. And not real, and telling them all the time, pray and fast. You know, pray and fast. You know, your husband's beating you, pray and fast.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was everything was pray and fast, pray and fast. And what God had taught me was that He created us to be we're created 4 parts, and spiritual is just one part. You know, but when we go to church, the focus is spirit. So we only take care of the spirit. And everything else around us is falling apart. Our marriages are falling apart. Our children are falling apart. Our health is falling apart. But we're going to church and we're reading that Bible and we're fasting. But everything around is falling apart. But, you know, we're created 4 parts, which is mental being, spiritual being, emotional being, and physical being. And what I love to teach is like, think about it, 4 parts. It's like a table with 4 legs.
Yes.
If you cut off one of the legs, the table can't function. The purpose that it was designed for is to be on those steady 4 legs. And that's us as human beings. If we only take care of, say, the spiritual and we go to the gym and we eat right, we're only taking care of 2 parts. So the table is going to be on 2 legs and it's not going to complete its purpose. We have to learn how to take care of all parts.
No, and thank God that God gave you that awakening, right? Because you're helping others. And I know that He's awakening others because, you know, I think of it growing up in that kind of environment to a certain extent, like it wasn't their fault. They were just doing what they were taught.
Exactly.
Until then somebody comes in and says, no, there's something more. There's something more. You know, there's something in your spirit that's like, something's off. And we tend to leave it there. Okay, there's off. No, dig into God. What is off? And how can I help this? Like you. So you leaned into it, but you also did your own work, which is important, right? Because we don't want the blind leading the blind, right? I remember when I first came back to the Lord, right? And I was strong in the Lord. And nobody was talking about these things, about your mental health, whatever. And I went through such deep hurt in the church that I actually had suicidal thoughts. And nobody was talking about therapy. And by the grace of God, I literally just had my Bible. I hate to say just my Bible, but you understand what I mean. That's all I knew. And so I just got into the Word and called out to God, and I survived by the grace of God. But it didn't have to be that hard. And so I was talking to the listeners in my episode about that most people are just surviving. They're not thriving, right? They're just making it, but they're not really thriving in their life, right? And so why do you think that, like, when you're listening to people, what are they saying to you? Why are they just white knuckling it? Why, you know?
Because it's all they know. You know, it's familiar. You know, generational trauma is familiar. It feels, one of the things that's so important that we should all know is that we need safety like we need water. You know, like if you don't have water, you die. So a lot of people are struggling mentally because they don't feel safe. So their mental health is not well because they don't feel safe. And the same four components, we need to feel safe spiritually. That means with God.
Yes, yes.
We need to feel safe physical in our relationships. We need to feel safe that we can emotionally, that we can actually be vulnerable.
Yes.
And we need to feel safe to share with people, listen, this is what I'm thinking. Without being called crazy or without being told, oh, you just need to pray more. You know what I mean? So we need safety in all those areas. And it's so hard. Just you and I the other day had a real vulnerable moment, and I felt like when I got in the car after that, it felt like so good for me, like just to have that vulnerable moment with you. And it was so deep, but I also felt God's presence in that moment, because we need, our hearts need to feel safe. Like I'm struggling with this, but most people don't feel safe because there are people that judge them, gossip about them, and who more, like this beautiful topic is that women do this to women.
Yes.
Women do this to women.
Yes.
We don't allow other women to feel safe in our company because we're judging them. We're, gossiping about them. We're, doing sneaky stuff, and it's just not, I believe that's why God created womanhood, like why women need women is because who better understands your heart like another woman.
Right.
But if you meet a woman who's angry, or you meet a woman who's trying to be tough and survival mode, where you're in a healing mode. So you have to be so careful, like you have to be so careful who you trust your heart with, And I find that when people are hurting, they just vomit. I call it, they vomit on everybody because they just, please, somebody hear me, hear me, hear me. And then they get hurt again. They go to church and they creating spiritual, what do you call that? Soul ties in the church with another unhealed person, and then wonder why they get hurt, and they're like, oh, I trusted her. Why? Why did you trust her? Like, what just because you have familiar hurts, then you shouldn't. They're not healed. I remember I had a recent client came to me so broken, so much abuse, so much spiritual abuse, taken advantage in the church by a pastor. Like, it was just horrible, her trauma. And then she says that she met these people in the church and she started sharing her testimony with them. And I said, did you know these people? And she's like, well, I met them twice. They gave me a ride. And I'm like, but why did you share? And she's like, oh, because that's my testimony. I said, what is the definition of your testimony? What is that? I said, because you're still bleeding. You're bleeding all over the place. Oof. That's not a testimony.
Wow,
but people confuse a testimony for pain. Wow. That's not a testimony. A testimony is something that God delivered you from, something that you can help others to heal. But we don't, because we say, oh, my boyfriend used to beat me. Oh, my boyfriend used to beat me too. And then so we just bonding with people in the church, sharing hurts, and thinking we're like healed, because we could talk about it. That doesn't mean you're healed. No. And then you want this poor girl she's bleeding on everybody who's willing to hear her, and then these people are taking advantage of her, and she's wondering. And then she got mad at me because I told her that's not a testimony. No. She got. But we really need
to confront people with truth,
especially if they're going to get hurt again.
Yes, exactly.
And you're telling them this is the doorway you're opening. For people to keep hurting you. Yes. We have to be good stewards of our hearts. Right. So that's
So how have you seen a strength develop in your own life? Like, what did you think it was? Maybe what has been beneficial? What like, oh no, that was not strength. That was just pure fear. Things like that. Well, how have you seen that develop in your own life?
Oh my God. Well, God started my own healing. I'm a survivor of many abuses in the church, Christian family, very well meaning, I would say, like to the outside world, I had the perfect family, like to the outside world. And like any parent, I believe my parents did their best. I believe, with the limited knowledge they had. And I saw everyone, they had great qualities, but there was a lot of things they couldn't deal with, and so I remember carrying this pain. I remember for years. And so people who knew me in high school and they find me now, they're like, wow, you became a Christian therapist? Like, because most of them remember all the anger I used to have. I had a lot of anger.
Wow.
And even my own kids, which is a great testament that of who I am, because they said, Mama, we can't picture you that way,
Right.
And I was full of rage.
Wow.
Like, I started fighting probably at the age of 10 in school.
Wow.
I started fighting, and the last fight I had, I was like 19 years old. So for 9 years,
Jesus.
I had this aggression, and anyone messed with me, messed with my brother, mostly because he used to get bullied a lot. I was not afraid to fight anyone.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
I used to fight guys.
Tough girl.
Yeah, I was. I was a mean girl. I was a mean girl. No one messed with me, And here I was I grew up, I call it Amish, those strict Pentecostal with my long skirts. And I would pick up my long skirt and jump on guys.
Oh my
Like,
God.
guys. Like, I
Oh
was
my
not
God.
afraid.
Yeah.
But I always tell this
And
to
meanwhile, excuse me, that could be perceived as like, oh, nobody can mess with her. She's strong. She was like, and you were just hurting and angry.
hurting and angry. And I didn't realize that. Because this is what we do. And I could say this even as a young kid. It's crazy. But this is what we do. We justify our own crazy.
Oh,
we
for
justify
sure.
our own mess.
Oh, for sure.
So
for sure.
I used to was beating up everybody and saying, oh, I'm just defending my brother. Oh, I'm just, like, it was always a reason why I was beating up people, Like, you couldn't look at me. You couldn't say anything. Like, I was so quick. And the crazy part is that I did this for 9 years. Even in church arenas. Like, I remember the last fight I had, I was 19 years old. I was in a church trip roller skating.
Oh my God.
And this girl kept messing with my boyfriend. And thought because we were in a church trip, I was afraid of her.
Oh my God.
And I took off my skates and beat her down.
Oh my God.
And I remember seeing her on the floor and I had her jewelry in my hand, and she was bleeding. Because I was not a girl fighter either. My father was a professional boxer, young, so he taught me to fight.
Oh, man.
But when I saw her on the floor, that at 19 years old, and this is where God started to turn my heart, I was like, ew. I said, this is not feminine.
Wow.
I said, this is not who God called me to be.
Yes.
Like, I didn't like it for the first time. And I said, I will not fight anymore.
Wow.
I said, I'm not. And I didn't.
Oh, good.
That was the last, matter of fact, no. I had a fight defending my brothers in my 20s. But, but I didn't fight out of
It wasn't your go-to anymore.
Exactly. It wasn't my defense. I was, but that's what started that little pinch in me where God was like, I always say the Holy Spirit started where I heard him, because I believe the Holy Spirit is always speaking. But it was the first time I heard him say, you need to deal with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and thank God you leaned into that voice, because often we don't, right? We can have that aha moment, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
For the moment.
Yeah.
And then the next day go back to it.
It's like a very small moment, Yeah. So when you have people come to you, what are some things that you start to dismantle for them, like lies they believe, like, no, I got this, and you clearly see they don't got this, hence why they're on your couch or on your Zoom. So what are some key lies that you see that they're believing?
It's not it's patterns.
Okay.
I always tell people patterns don't lie.
Okay.
Patterns do not lie. So with a lot of women, it's this I got it attitude, like I got this.
Right.
Or it didn't hurt me. Well, I love when they say that one. That didn't hurt me.
Yeah.
Oh, I do what I got to do. Or my favorite is I'm a strong woman. Yeah. I'm just strong. Yeah. I can handle anything. And those are all lies, And one of the things, the tools I use is something I call the lifeline with people. And what we do is we map out their life, like literally from birth. And I ask all the questions about parents, what they saw in the house. Like we identify. And through this lifeline, God always shows me their moments of trauma. Okay. How trauma entered their lives and things they thought were normal. but it was actually seeds of trauma
Wow.
being planted in their lives, you know?
Wow.
So again, it goes back to, I'm actually going to do a video on this week. It's what's familiar.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
really believe, like if you grew up in a house where everybody lied and then you marry someone who's a liar,
Yeah.
you think, well, we all lie.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes.
that's nothing. That it's all lies. Or I've worked
Yes.
with women who they grew up only seeing their fathers cheat, and then they marry a guy who doesn't cheat on them, but he's emotionally abusive, he's verbally abusive, and all they focus on what he don't
He
cheat.
don't cheat. At least he
And
doesn't do that.
yeah,
At least.
yeah, he doesn't cheat. He's a
Yeah.
great man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and not realizing it's because everything else is familiar to you.
Wow. Wow.
You know, so these women, they just take this trauma and think it's okay because it's familiar.
Right. Right.
You know,
Right.
and so we have to be willing to unlearn.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part for people,
Yes.
because we will hold on to a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I use a small analogy to show you. If you were raised your whole life that you wake up and you brush your teeth first thing before you eat, before you
Yeah.
brush your teeth, you think that's Bible. Like that's golden.
Right.
And then you marry someone who eats first and washes teeth. You're like, that's
You're
so
like,
disgusting.
gross, yes.
That's so disgusting.
Yes.
Something's
Ew.
wrong with
Yes,
you.
yes,
You know,
yes.
because we convince ourselves.
My grandson does that. And he says,
Yeah.
I don't want to taste toothpaste in my cereal. Like,
Me too.
bro.
I do it now. I do it now.
Oh my
I
God.
wash my teeth after I eat.
That's
And,
hysterical.
but my whole life I was raised, you do that first thing.
Yes.
First
yes.
thing in the morning. If it's not what we're doing, we think everybody else is crazy.
Right. Right.
I'll tell you this funny
Wow,
joke.
Wow.
One time, my brother and I had this discussion, and because, you know, when you're with dysfunction, again, you think that's normal.
Yes.
So I was telling him, he said, you think our family is dysfunctional, but he said it in a very like defensive way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yes, I do think you guys are dysfunctional. And he's like, oh, what makes you think that? He said, you know, we all think. And I said, do you remember the show The Munsters back in the days where their niece came to live with them? She was a blonde.
Uh-huh.
She was the only one that looked normal.
Right,
But they
right,
all,
right.
and so every time she did something, every time they went out and stuff, they would tell her, everyone's looking at you. You know, it's because they thought she was not.
different.
She's
she
different.
was weird.
Because there was more of the Munsters. You know, they thought they were normal because there was more of them. Where they thought something was wrong with her because she was standing alone.
That's such a good
so
analogy.
yeah, so I told that to my brother, and he just looked at me, didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And the next day he texted me. He's like, "So you're calling us the Munsters?" It took
Bro.
24 hours for it to resonate. He said, "So you're the niece and we're the Munsters?"
Well, yeah.
So that's what it is. Dysfunction finds dysfunction. So you're gonna find, if you really believe something,
Yeah.
you're gonna find someone who's gonna agree with you,
Right,
so that
right.
you don't have to change.
Right. Right.
So I call it, if you smoke weed and you tell yourself, "Oh, I need this so that I can my anxiety," because
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
people now. Oh, it calms me down.
Right.
Chances are you're gonna hang out with people who believe the same nonsense.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and think, I don't have to change because everyone in my circle,
Yes.
you know,
Exactly.
supports that.
Yes. Exactly.
So
Oh my goodness.
It's
I
a
love that
mess.
analogy. I'm going to remember that
Yeah.
because I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel like they're that blonde girl.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
And then the thing is, you have to just keep leaning into the therapy, leaning into the Lord, because if you don't, then you're going to believe them. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I am the crazy one. Because
Yeah.
look, they all agree,
Yeah,
right? It's like
exactly.
the majority agrees that I'm wrong. And I think with healing, especially, Lucy, and therapy, and really getting that freedom and healing, it's hard because sometimes you are the only one. Right? You are the only one. But even in that, don't worry about it. Don't
Mhm.
worry about that you're the only one. Don't worry about that they think you're odd or whatever. Let the fruit of that healing then speak to them, right?
I think what happens though, especially with women, they don't want to be the only one
Yeah.
because it's lonely
Yeah.
being the only
Yeah.
one. My
Yeah.
journey has been very lonely
Yeah.
because God has taken me places. I was telling this to my son yesterday. We were talking about school, and I said, I don't know how I knew I wanted to go to college. Because when I wanted to go to college, I didn't know not even one Latina ever that went to college.
Wow.
But something in me wanted to go to
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember saying it and people looking at me in my group like, why you want to go to college? You know, like,
Crazy.
how are you going to pay for that?
Wow.
And all these, you know, what I
Wow.
call dream killers,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but I knew I wanted to go to college, you know? And so, but nobody around me in my group, nobody in my church, nobody Latina. I didn't have one role model of what
Right.
that looked like,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So when you start doing things, because that's the dream God starts putting for you as a
Yes.
woman,
Yes.
and you're the only one, I believe a lot of women of God downplay themselves so that they can fit in and be accepted.
100%.
You know, they're so
100%.
they'd rather be a group of mean girls,
Yes.
what I call mean, angry
Yes.
girls,
Yes.
than to be that one that's separated. But there's people that believe they're separated, but they're dysfunctional, and that's why nobody's with them. You know, but
that.
yeah, that.
Yeah.
But when God takes you on a different journey, it's lonely.
Yes,
And women
it is.
struggle
It
with
is.
feeling lonely.
It
They don't
is.
want to.
Right.
So it's
It
almost like,
is.
you know, kids. You know, they'd
Yes.
rather be with all the mean kids
Yes.
just to have friends.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of adults that do the same.
Yeah.
You know?
But, you know, even encouraging people that even though it might feel lonely, when you heal, you start to attract
Oh,
people
yeah.
that are healed.
Mhm.
And then you're like, oh, it was worth it. Because the other what else is waiting for you is to remain in dysfunction.
Yeah.
And be in the mess and be in the mess.
Mhm.
So it's hard, but it's worth it.
It is.
You know, it's
Well,
worth
it's
it
worth
to
it
do
for
the
your
work.
walk with the Lord.
Yes,
You know,
100%.
it's worth it.
Yeah.
But there's so many people, honestly, there's more people that don't than do.
Right.
Really
Right.
do.
Yeah. But I appreciate the work that you do. And if we keep sounding the alarm, hopefully more and more people will understand how beneficial it is. And for me, especially, it's just if we live it out, Lucy, right? If they see us, we're not only speaking it like we grew up with, right? But that they, in our life, they would see us living it out. That they would see that the strength that comes from the Lord is so much better than us like trying to get through life and we're hanging on like by the hair of our chinny chin chin, you know, and that it is worth it. And then being surrounded by women that have strength in the Lord also, because like you were sharing, when we have vulnerable moments, there's strength in that.
Yeah.
Right? That no, we're going to lean into each other and there's beauty. There's just so many lies about women doing life together, right? And I just encourage you to dismantle that lie. I believe in every episode we've talked about that, about not doing life with people. That's not what God intended.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be together. There's benefit of being together. But when you heal, you will attract people that are healing, and it's beautiful, you know?
Do you know, I have often shared this on my videos because it was such a huge moment in my life. But I remember I was married. I was probably married like 5 years. And I was reading a book because, as you know, I'm a bookaholic. I
Yes,
love
you
to
are.
read. I was reading a book. I'm laying in bed reading a book. And there was a line in the book that literally smacked me in the face. And it said, a healthy person cannot be with an unhealthy person. And I remember how that like slapped me because I knew at that moment my marriage was unhealthy.
Right.
And I knew I was with an unhealthy person.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready to face it. So the way I handled it was I closed the book and I put it way up back in my nightstand. And I didn't open it again for 5 years.
Wow.
5 years because I wasn't ready.
Wow.
Because we do this, women do this.
Yeah.
We're with an unhealthy person and we say, oh, they're unhealthy. Because we don't accept that there's something unhealthy in us that's staying with that unhealthiness, you know? So it's easier to just blame the man.
100% right.
And so I knew very clearly everything that was unhealthy with my husband.
Right.
But I didn't want to look in the mirror and say, why was I accepting that? What was in me that was accepting that unhealthiness?
Right.
You know? And I wasn't ready. So I closed the book and filed it away.
I know when I came back to the Lord, or I just say came to the Lord, right? Because I really didn't know the Lord until I knew the Lord.
Exactly.
I was separated from my husband. And I remember talking to the Lord like, no, but he has to fix this. He has to fix that. Da, da, da. And the Lord was like, you need to take yourself off the pedestal that you place yourself on. I was like, what? I'm not all that in a bag of chips. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
And so that's a big deal because we have attracted these relationships. And like you were saying, we're comfortable with another. Those familiar spirits are comfortable. And so until somebody says, no, that's not what I want anymore. That's not what I want.
But mothers do this, you know, parents do that even with their little kids. You know, I used to work with adolescents for a very long time. And I remember they would bring me their child and say, my child is angry. My child is depressed. My child, fix them.
Where did they get that?
Yeah. And I would say, who's angry in the house? Who's depressed in the house?
Yes,
And they would get very
Jesus.
defensive and very angry. No, none of us. It's the child, you know? But it goes back to, you're not even going to deal with what's unhealthy in your child if you're not even willing to deal with what's unhealthy in you. You know, and this is why there's a lot of scapegoats in families.
Wow.
You know, that one child that speaks up, that one child that acts out, that one child, no, they're the problem. I hear it all the time. I'm probably almost every day I hear that, you know, it's my child, it's my husband, it's everybody except them.
Yes, yes.
It's very rare do I get a person that comes into, even to therapy, that says, I'm the problem. Fix me. You know, like most of them come in, you know, my marriage.
Yeah.
My relationship with my mother, my father, you know, like it's never
Oh my
fix
God,
me.
that's so
I'm
true.
a hot mess.
That's so true.
Nobody does it. Nobody does
true.
that, you know. This just happened this past week. I was having a conversation with my youngest, and I always say she's my spicy child but I've learned so much through that relationship. And I remember she was trying to talk to me like for months, and one day she just like was like crying. She just said, listen to me, listen to me. And I remember we were sitting like this close, and suddenly like I saw her tears, right? But I heard her words. She said, listen to me.
Wow.
And I remember we ended the conversation, and I could cry about that too. And I fell on my knees and I said, God, what am I not hearing?
Wow.
What am I not hearing? You know, because I believe in all our relationships, but I see this a lot of parents too. We all say we're great communicators, but we suck at listening.
Yes.
And listening is probably 90% of communication.
Yes.
We suck at it.
Yes.
I can have a conversation with someone and I know right away when they're not listening. You know, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, let me know when you're ready to listen. I just call people out because I don't want to waste my energy.
Yes.
If they're not even listening, you know? And people,
Yes.
I'm listening. I'm like, no, you weren't. No, you weren't. You know, I'm not going to waste it now.
Yes.
But that intricate moment with my daughter, and I just reminded her, we went out this week and I reminded her of that because she's not a good listener. I said, Mama, you taught me how to be a better listener. You know, like when you talk to me, when my kids talk to me, like I drop everything, you know, and I'm like, I'm listening, you know, like, and I think that if we just heard each other more,
yes, that's good.
It invites, especially women, it invites us to be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because I'm a believer, vulnerable invites vulnerable. No one is going to be vulnerable with you if you acting like, especially in the church. I love this. Everybody's holier than thou. I've counseled even pastors, and I always say, or pastors' wives, and when they get holier than thou, I'm like, oh, so you arrived. Let me know. Tell me the recipe. I'm like, I want to arrive too. I want to arrive. You know, I believe God says in His Word He's going to work on us to the day He comes. But there's people that believe they've arrived, so nobody's gonna be vulnerable with them. Exactly. You know, like if you're not real with your stuff, you don't invite anybody to be real with their stuff. You know.
I was just having a conversation with one of my pastors, Pastor Dawn, and she was talking about that, about vulnerability, and she says, I know some people say don't share everything, but she's like, why not? You know,
you just gotta be wise.
Not? You know,
just gotta be wise.
So yeah.
And some cultures are very open. I remember I've been in tables, like in some cultures, I won't say what cultures, but where they just like, and I'm like, did they just say that out loud? You know, where Spanish people, we're a little bit more prideful, you know, like.
Oh, for sure.
Like your child is in jail, Spanish people, and they say, oh, he went away. He's in the Marines. He's in the Army. You know, like, yeah, they'll say he's, you know, daddy went and got a new job far away, you know, like, so because there's certain things that seem shameful. You know, in cultures to talk about. Right. And, you know, we're raised with, lo que pasa en la casa, se queda en la casa. You know, that means whatever happens at home stays in the home, you know. We're raised with that dysfunction.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't want none of that. We don't want none of that. And to do what we can to, you know, to let women know, hey, we're a safe place, right? Or, hey, let me direct you. Like, for example, my friend does therapy. That's a safe place. You know, do the work, the work. And like you said, the continual examining in our relationship. what am I bringing? What am I allowing? Right? Holy Spirit, speak to me. This is why it's so important to have a relationship with God.
Yeah.
Right? So that he can speak to you, because he does, like you said, he's always speaking, but we're
Yeah.
not listening.
Yeah.
Right? So even that, the listening skills we need for the Holy Spirit,
Spirit.
so that he can direct us in this process that we need to do to heal, to be there for one another, to lead well, to really exhibit a strength that is godly and that blesses, right? Because we grew up with a strength that was just mean,
Yeah.
right? Oh, ella tiene un carácter tan fuerte. She has such a strong character. That's not a compliment, right? It's not. You're scary.
Yeah. And some women wear you're strong like it's a badge of honor.
Yes, yes.
You know, I know I've always been told I was strong.
Me too.
And God knows there's been so many times where I don't want to be strong.
Right.
You know, I want to find that safe place that I can go to and just be. And I had to find that on Jesus' lap.
Yeah.
You know, there's times where I've been in so much pain, and that's no one's been a safe place, or no one's available. And I've had to learn that my safe place is in the arms of God.
Amen.
You know, like, and so I use that as a technique for a lot of people who suffer anxiety, you know, and depression, to just, you know, I call it taking a blanket. You know, I always tell people, everybody who's healing should invest in a beautiful throw and something that feels good, that looks beautiful. And when you have those moments of fear, because anxiety is fear, you know, when you have these moments of fear, when you have these moments of great sadness, to wrap yourself in that throw, to find a safe place. I tell everybody, and I know I did it, everybody should create a safe space in their home. And sometimes that safe space is a corner. Yeah. You know, I have had women who their safe space is a closet, and they make a closet. Yeah. But when you find that safe space, wrap yourself in that blanket, and imagine that it's God's arms. You have to do an imagery. Just close your eyes and say, here I am, Father, and wrap yourself. And believe me, that tricks the nervous system. That's so good. And it does. And you start to feel it. And it's so healing. It's so healing. And women have to learn that. We tend to be so codependent. You know, I tell women, you want to know if you trust God first above all things? And they're like, how? Most of the time they ask me like scary, like how? And I'm like, when something happens, do you pick up the phone first? Who are you calling first when something happens? Wow. When you're hurting, who's the first person you call?
Oh my God, Lucy, that reminds me when my husband passed away, because I always thought I got it, I'm strong, the whole thing. And especially because I was such a boss in the home, and not in a good way. And when he passed away, I remember I would drive and every noise in the car was scary all of a sudden. And I realized how much I really depended on him. I didn't think I was so dependent on him until he wasn't there. And it was that. If there was a situation, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do this? Hey, but meanwhile, I thought, oh, strong woman, hear me roar. I got all this. And then I realized, wow. And so it took me to a greater level of trust in the Lord, and that I needed him, you know? And it's so funny because you say about wrapping in the blanket. The verse that God gave me for that time was from Proverbs about she's clothed in strength and dignity. Yeah. So even imagining that blanket, that strength that he covers you with to get through the situation. Yeah. My God, that's such a good tool, Lucy.
Thank you for works. That. It really works, ladies, or anybody. Man, woman, even for your children. If your children have nightmares, I help moms a lot. You know, if your children, you can teach them that. You know, and you can wrap. You know how when you have a baby, they swaddle them because it does something to your nervous system. It really does. So you can learn to swaddle no matter how old you are. You need that safety. You know, it really does.
You know, this is such a good viewpoint of why Jesus and therapy is so beautiful. It is. Right? Because you've just given us such a tool, but it's a godly tool. Right? But it helps the nervous system. You know, it's just so beautiful. I encourage you, if you are struggling, if you are just at your wit's end, reach out to a Christian therapist that is spirit-led. You know, reach out to Lucy. She's on Facebook and Instagram. Find somebody that fits for you, but it's so important. If you don't have to struggle as hard as you're struggling.
Right.
There's help for you. There's help in his presence, abiding with him. There's help in his word, but he has equipped people. She's called to this
Yeah.
from 10 years old. There's people that are called and equipped to take you further. Like that right there, that's something that I'm going to remember. I can't believe I never heard you speak about that. Or maybe maybe I
You
need
take
it
me
now.
for granted.
Yeah.
You take me for granted because I'm your friend.
Yeah, like, oh, Lucy.
It's true,
Yeah.
though. We
Oh, it's
do.
probably in the back of my head, and the Lord is like, you need to
say,
remember this now,
Yeah.
right? So I
It
really thank
helps.
you for that.
Yeah. Another tool, though, that I wanted to say is that, when you say this, I get people sometimes that reach out to me is like, how much do you charge? Whatever. And trust me, when I worked at the hospital, I used to get paid so much more. And I know that God made me provide affordable therapy for people.
It is.
And so even my kids always like, Ma, you should raise your prices. Ma, like, what are you, crazy? And I always say, this is what the Lord told me. The moment I get greedy, I know my blessings are going to go away, you know?
Wow.
But I always tell people, even if you can't afford weekly, like other people, or even bi-weekly, one session a month so that you could get tools.
Yes.
You know?
That's good.
And one of the tools I always give is reading. I tell people, even for men who come that don't like to read, I'm like, listen, buy the Audible and put it in your car, you know, because at least it's entering, new knowledge is entering you, you know? Because I always tell people the truth and lies can't coexist. So every time you hear a truth, a lie has to leave.
Right.
But there's people that rather marinate in the lies than to invest in hearing the truth.
Right.
And I always tell people, probably 90% of my job is speaking life into people. That's probably 90% of my job.
Yeah.
You know, it's just speaking life because they've heard so much lies. And this is what I was going to say. When it comes to trauma, you have to understand there's very few people in the church equipped to minister to trauma. They mean well.
Yeah.
But people who have experienced trauma have a hard time even wrapping their mind around the concept that there's a God who loves them.
Yes.
And so you can tell someone all the time, God loves you, God loves you, God loves you. But when they have so much trauma living in their bodies and in their brain, they can't wrap their head around that, you know? And so they feel more guilty because now they don't believe, you know, that God could love them because of their trauma, you know? And I have people that have been with me for years in therapy, like literally years, and are now wrapping their head around that because of the layers of trauma. We think one shoe fits all. There's one size fits all. And it doesn't, because everyone, oh my God, I've worked with people that I don't even know how they're functioning with the levels of trauma they have. But then you're supposed to tell them, you know, God loves you and that's going to solve everything, or do a prayer. And it doesn't. And I work with people who are leaders and they'll tell me, oh, this person, you know, said this and this and this. And I told them that, you know, they have to forgive. And I'm like, oh, no, you know, you don't tell that to someone who's in trauma. They have to first process their pain. You're putting more guilt on them, more of a load on them that they have to now forgive when they haven't even processed their pain, you know? So we have to be so careful. Even if you mean well, like if you don't know, say you don't know. Like I'm like, what's the big? I've had people come to me for therapy and they'll outright ask me, have you ever worked with this? And if I haven't, I don't lie.
Right.
But we do that in the church. Like, oh, see, okay, like, you don't know, you don't know. You know what I mean? Like I'll tell people, I don't know, but I promise you I'm gonna do my research on it, you know, and I'll get back to you, or I'll refer you to somebody who is good in this area. I don't need that. Like I don't need that extra. But the church does that. You know, everybody feels like, oh, because I have a ministry or I'm a prayer warrior, that you can do with everybody. And you can't. No. We're pushing so many trauma people away from the church. Right. You know, instead of to the arms of God, you know?
And we're a body, right? And so we all have different functions.
Yes.
And therapy and counseling is part of a function that helps the body. So I can't do what you do. And so that's why then I direct people to you, right? And that's beauty in that I don't have to do it all. You don't have to do it. We all have a part to play, but make sure that we're playing the part that we're supposed to. And then directing people where they can go so they can
be
receive.
careful with your words. You know, like,
we keep learning. Our
mouth. Yes.
We keep learning.
Our mouth. Oh my God, it's too much.
Seriously. Oh, Lucy, thank you so much for joining me today. You have helped me And I know that you've helped those that are listening, and I really appreciate you.
Can I add one more
Of
piece
course,
before
of
we
course.
end? I know that your topic is
Strong girl, I see you.
strong girl, I see you. To all the strong girls that think they're strong out there, know that God does see you.
Yes.
But you have to understand, we walk in this role of being women and we don't even understand how God designed us. So we have to go back, like understand our creation and how God originally designed us before pain and sin came into our lives. Because a lot of what women think and hold the badge of strong is it's just pain that they're carrying, you know, and God did not create us to carry that load. That's not in our feminine energy. I'll meet women in therapy and I'm like, you are walking in a masculine energy, and that's not of God. No. That's not your originally design. That's right. And so you can't even wrap your arms around the concept of I'm a daughter of a king. Yes. If you can't even walk in your feminine energy, you can't. And you have to learn, how do I get back to that feminine energy, my original design of protection in the arms of God. Like, we were created to be protected. Right. And because so many women have experienced so much unprotection, they've so much abuse, so much hurt, so much betrayal by people who were supposed to protect them. They create these layers. I can tell right away. I can meet someone right away and I can tell that the layers of pain they're carrying just by what they say, you know? And so we have to go back, strong girls. We have to go back, and it's okay. It's beautiful, actually, to walk in our feminine energy. It's so beautiful. And something as little as this, you know, my whole life, I would tell people my favorite color was blue. My whole life. And when God healed me, and he continues to heal, when God healed me, I discovered that my true favorite color was pink.
It sure is.
It is. And it's so feminine.
Yeah.
And,
I love it.
And blue is a masculine color, right? But, and then I went back and I'm like, where did I get blue? Where did I get blue? And realized that that was my mother's favorite color.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And my mom walks in a masculine energy, you know, of that pain and that thing. But I wanted to mimic her.
Wow.
So I even used to say her favorite color was my favorite color. Wow. When in reality, when God started peeling the layers, he showed me just how soft and delicate I am. And that's why
so beautiful.
My color's pink, you know? Like, it's so... And there's a such thing as pink person. Find your pink person that's soft. But
yeah. And soft doesn't mean weak.
That's what women think.
Yeah,
I get that a lot. I don't want to be soft.
Yeah.
I don't want them to see me this way. They're going to take advantage of me. Then you're not setting boundaries.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful to know your identity in Christ as a daughter. It's so beautiful. And yes, if we just go there, who do you say I am? Who did you create me to be? You know, but it's understandable, right? People have been, you know, mishandled. People have not been protected
at all.
But when we go back to our Father, and he's like, daughter, I have healing for you. I have your identity. So thank you.
Yeah,
strong girl, I see you.
Strong girl, I see you.
All right, bye, friends. Until next time, this is the Liz Teach Podcast. God bless you.
That's good.
Yeah.